when I read your book, it shows me why you might have the search to begin with, because you're looking to extend your life. You want something beyond what is actually all there is. And so people go on these journeys because they're for the comfort and the ease or fear of dying and what situation there actually is, and a pacifier or something to. So when you actually see that, if you really look into that, okay, yeah, that is why I might be following it. Then you do an inventory. It's somehow something drops off.
Well, see, that's true on the physical level. As if I'm really comfortable, I'm lying in my bed and everything is perfect, then I'm not going to get up and look for another pillow. But if I'm uncomfortable, I will say, this pillow is no good. It doesn't really work. I'm going to get another one. And that's fine on the physical level. But if we try to do that on the emotional level, we're saying, I'm not comfortable with this. I need to find something else. That can work, but not if the something else is some magical belief. Because then you will fall into a hypnotic trance. You'll be hypnotized by Jesus in heaven or whatever the spiritual idea is. And you'll say, if I could just realize that, then this need would disappear. And the truth is, it won't. It will just come back in another form. Until we understand that now is all we really have. And whether we're comfortable or not is not really the point.
That's
I mean,
beautiful.
The last 6 months have been a good instructor for me on that, in that regard. I spent quite a bit of time in terrible pain, lying on my back with no way to not be in pain. And finally, I'm staring up at the ceiling, and finally I just gave up. Well, this is what I got. You want to kill yourself? I thought about it. And then no, so you're going to have to power through, babe. That's all you got. Yeah, you're just going to have to power through. And you and I were speaking about this earlier, but over coffee, yes. And yeah, I think this is really simple, but not simple to do. That whatever condition we're in, whether it's glorious or horrible, that's what we have to work with. And it's only a really rare person who understands that and succeeds. Not succeeds in attaining some perfect situation, but succeeds in working with what we have right now. A lot of my critics, and they are many, don't like that idea because they want to believe that they will transcend this body-mind, that there's something else, there's some higher consciousness. And frankly, I don't believe that. When I look into myself, I don't see it. I see myself as an animal with quite a bit of self-awareness and intelligence, but not really different from a gorilla. Very, very little difference. When I've observed bonobos at the San Diego Zoo, they have a wonderful exhibit there. They're behind glass and they have a very large enclosure. And we went to the zoo and observed them for quite a while. They're just like us. They want love, they want to be touched, they want companionship, they want physical comfort, they want food. I think that all of us are just like that. We're just like a bonobo or a gorilla, except we have a little more brain cells up here that allows us to be more self-aware, but not a lot more. And certainly not, in my view, self-aware enough to attain some kind of perfect understanding of the universe. And my greatest critique of these spiritual masters from the 20th century, like Nisargadatta, I think he was a really okay cat, probably understood a lot, but made a claim to understand everything. That was the claim, that he had found the oneness of reality. Well, the universe is a very big place. We're finding out now that most of it's dark and we can't even see it. So it's quite a claim to claim to understand the whole thing. And so when I talk that way, people tell me, well, you're a materialist. That's why you like science. I do. And the reason I like it is that it's open-ended. And the most talented scientists never imagine that they've got anything figured out. What they say is, so far, these observations that we're making seem to make this theory of ours robust. It seems to be working. But if I was presented with some evidence to the contrary, I'd give this one up in a minute and go the other way. And that is where the dividing line is for me between so-called spirituality and this real understanding. I have these ideas, but if somebody would show me some evidence to the contrary, I'd give up this idea in a moment. I'd love to, in fact. I'd love to hear another idea that would work. And I've tried in every way to explain that, and some people get it, and some people don't. They really don't understand that there's a limit to what we humans can know and ever will know. And that what we're doing here is living as advanced animals, not as gods on earth. That's my point of view, at least. Now I'll be silent. I'd like to hear from someone else.
Yeah, about the stuff you said last, I think the outstanding thing for me is that this is empowering to be said. I think because the situation is bad for all of us, because we're all like basically not knowing what's going on, and we all know that one after the other dies, and one after the other gets sick and worse. And I think that this is not going to be solved, and in fact is inescapable. And sometimes I talk like this, and then people say, "Come on, like, don't give up. Like, we can do it." But I don't think that like I'm not thinking. I don't think it's affirmative in this way. For me, it's nice. It's in a way like a dramatic and melancholic permit. So yeah, that's what I'm thankful for, because this is something I have not found somewhere else.
Say more. Say more.
I mean, it's in a way this is it's horrible, I think, to be alive, because I mean, like, we cannot stabilize really. I mean, not only that, are we all like sucked into like a black hole that is death. It's kind of lurking everywhere, but also like, am I like in a conditioned psychology that is like full of faults and full of problems and ridiculous behaviors, and like as soon as I'm figuring it out, I'm almost dead. So like, I think the situation is I think it's tragic, and but like for me these texts and also your presence on Facebook, they have shown it that you can actually face this and go very close to this and become at peace with this without smearing butter over it or like marmalade.
Yeah, well, I think the key to that is that you only have to do it right now. You don't have to come to some solution that lasts forever. It's just in this moment you can accept that that's the way it is. Not that's the way it always is or always will be, but in this moment, if I'm afraid, then fear exists. There's no reason to deny it, and there's no real way to talk yourself out of it. Fear is very real. When I say we're animals, there's the amygdala. The amygdala is a small part of the brain behind the ear, maybe an inch in. The amygdala responds instantly. It has a faster, well, the eyes are connected to a processing center, the visual cortex that's here, in where judgments can be made, and it's a complex calculation that the brain makes to get this input of lines and points and colors and assemble that into a world. And it takes time, small amount of time, but time. But the amygdala has a faster connection to the eyes. And it processes what it sees before there's any calculation. The amygdala has not really advanced since the lizard brain. We basically have the same amygdala in our brain that a lizard has. And a lizard only has the 3 Fs, which, yes, I mentioned the 3 Fs. So all it can do is flee it, fight it, or fuck it. And that is what the amygdala tells you to do when you come upon another creature. This is before you recognize this is my wife or this is some thug in the street. See, it's before all that calculation. You can see the amygdala in operation when you startle because you've seen a rope that looks like a snake. There's no calculation where you say, oh, that's only a rope. This is instant. And this just happens. And that is where the fear comes from. The fear is immediate. As soon as one is stimulated in the wrong way, fear arises. And you can't ever get into a state of spirituality, I say, where you'll be fearless. It doesn't work. The closest we can get to fearlessness, I think, is a warrior mentality, which deals with fear. It doesn't deny it. It says, yes, I'm afraid. Now what? Now what? So on the break, Mike and Maria were talking about coming to the end of a search or a journey that they were on. Was that? So I wonder if you'd say more about that.
Me too. Well, for me, 5 years ago, I had a awakening moment. Before the moment, for some of the minor details, what pushed me into searching, it was my wife had an affair. It happened when I was 29. I got married late, had a kid. Anyway, that's the story. But it broke me, so I was open to finding something new, and someone told me about a woman to go see, Byron Katie. So I go to that, and she had a no-body retreat, went there for 5 days, but on the 4th day I had an epiphany, say, an awakening moment for myself. But in that moment, I knew I wasn't the one, but I wasn't two. I wasn't separate. And all the learning that I had gotten from when I was in a religious way in my 20s, that all opened up for me. And so that being said, that put me on the journey. So I'm reading Nisargadatta, Francis Lucille, I've been to a lot of his retreats. Rupert Spire, I've seen him in Copenhagen. And a bunch of different people. So I've been searching and trying to find myself to match what my experience was. But as I was on the non-duality search, I ended up losing my zest for life. It more emptied me out than it did bring me back the initial joy that I had in my experience of what life was in that moment. And so, I've just been open to looking because it was hollowed. And then when I saw every once in a while I'd go on back at just to try to see something fresh. And that's where I saw your interview, and it helped break me from the non-duality belief system. I started to see it for what it was. I could never choose. It made sense. But then reading your books and just understanding how the mind works, it resonated for me. And that's why I said earlier today, when you take, because there's some good in there, but it's so mixed up with everything else. And so somehow you cut through all that spiritual crap, and you have a beautiful message that if you see it and take it for yourself and find yourself, you actually, my joy's back again. And each moment is precious. I'm just back to alive and well, and and happy and content, and I really don't need anything. And then when I put the understanding that it is just all perceptions, feelings, and I'm that, but in emotion, it makes sense to me. And then I don't fear dying. I don't need to extend it. I'm just thankful for the moment that's here, and it's beautiful. And so I really thank you for that. That's why I wanted to come here.
You're most welcome. Well, I think the non-duality as a concept is really hypnotic. And one of the things that makes it so hypnotic is that it's not entirely wrong. It has there's elements to that are really true. And we all are one in a certain sense, but in another sense we aren't. And when my mom died, I was in mourning, but the person next to me wasn't at all. So how could it really be said that we were one? If we're really one, we should all feel the same thing always. Yes, if there's really this one awareness. I don't really think there is this one awareness. I think that's kind of a lie. I think what it really is that we're all aware. And so we share that capability to be aware and to be intelligent. That we all have that. But to imagine that there's this overarching consciousness, that's a religious idea. I don't think it's any more valid than Christianity or Judaism or Islam. It's different. But there's an idea now that the entire universe is conscious. That's a claim that's being made. I'd like to see the evidence for that. I don't see any. It's just stated as if, what is it called? Pantheism? Yeah, pantheism, is that it? No, it's not quite it.
Pantheism and there's panentheism, and I don't know what the difference is.
Panpsychism? Well, I don't know. Is that true? What's the evidence? You just say that? And well, you mentioned Rupert Spira, Mike. He's someone I have criticized, although I've never met him. But I've criticized the technique of coming on as if he understands truth, and you only have to learn it from him, and then you'll understand truth too. And I don't see that. For one thing, I don't see that I have access to truth. I think I have access to what I've learned and can observe. I don't think that is some kind of truth that can stand forever. It's just a human experience. You mentioned Nisargadatta. He said that no one ever understood him except this one person. I don't know if you know that. So all the people who claim to be speaking the truth that they learned from Nisargadatta aren't. They didn't understand it. And people don't like to hear this critique. They really don't. They object to it. In fact, the people who like me have always tell me how brave I am to speak this way. I don't see that at all. I have nothing to lose. I don't have a career as a spiritual teacher, so if I tell you I have no truth, I don't lose any customers. And that's the problem with these gurus. They're in it for the money. Not only for the money, I get that. Some of them are good people. They really believe that they have something to share, and perhaps they do. But the problem is, well, I'll put this in terms of the profession I used to practice, which is psychotherapy. When you're a psychotherapist, which is a business after all, but it's a helping profession, you really care and you want to help, how do you know when to tell someone you've gone as far as you can with this therapy, especially if they're paying you $200 an hour? See, the incentives are in the wrong direction, and that's really the problem. And we're all just human after all, and we all need to make a living. So once you get set up as a spiritual teacher, especially one of these big name guys like an Adyashanti or whatever, who make a lot of money. Maybe $1 million or $2 million a year is what they're taking in for sitting there talking. I'm underpaid. So how do you tell the truth? Suppose, well, I actually had someone in my psychotherapy practice who was a Christian preacher. And that was how he made a living. He had a family, wife and family. And the subject of the therapy was he couldn't believe in that anymore. Now what do I do? And it took a long time for me to make him understand that if he kept lying, he was going to hurt himself. And it wasn't worth it. And he finally got it, and he resigned from that. But it wasn't easy. It was like pulling teeth. It was not easy at all for him to admit, I'm out of business. I don't have anything. I can't stand up there on Sunday morning anymore and make a speech. I just don't have it. It's not true. And I think we're all challenged that way, even in our personal lives. You don't have to be a spiritual teacher. It's pretty hard to be honest. It really is. And the thing that I came to many years ago was that was the only thing that would be valid. I had to be honest with myself and with other people and not lie. And that's not so easy. Sometimes you don't know that you're lying. So it takes quite a bit of self-observation, I think, and self-criticism to ask yourself, why do I believe this? Why am I saying this to this person? Is it really true? I don't mean an affair or something that you're trying to keep hidden. I wouldn't lie about that either. I just wouldn't have the affair, frankly. But I'm talking about telling someone, I've had this spiritual experience and it's valid and you can have it too. That just seems over the top. How do you really have the... See, people tell me that I'm audacious for saying, well, I'm awake and I know it. To me, that doesn't seem so audacious because that's just my experience. I'm not telling anybody else, and you can have this experience too, just follow the yellow brick road. If somebody says that they have experienced oneness, that's a hypnotic trance. And if they say no one really exists, no person really exists, that's a hypnotic trance. Of course we exist. I mean, it's so obvious that we exist. We're all here. And then they say, well, you're just dreaming this. Really? I have the dreams at night. When I wake up in the morning, this is all here. I didn't dream it up. Now, if what they mean is the world that we see and experience doesn't really exist in that form, that's true. There aren't colors out there. This is a field of energy. We're all aware of that. But to say that the interpretation of it is invalid is just foolish. I mean, I've got animals that look at the moon and see it. They're not dreaming the moon. They have animal awareness and they look at the moon and see it. And I see that moon also. They may have a little different vision of it, but we're basically saying that we see the moon. So when the non-duality people try to say that doesn't exist, I wonder how they justify that. I really do. And I've never gotten one of them to explain it to me. They always get to this point where it's an axiom and you just have to accept it because that's truth. You can know other things because they come from a reputable source and they don't make claims that cannot be demonstrated. Like if someone tells me the speed of sound is 700 miles an hour, I'll believe that because that person is a trained scientist and they know not to make up a lie. You have to, okay. But if someone tells me God is really making all of this be the way it is, and if you had enough faith, Robert, you would realize that I have no basis for believing that. I just can't. I don't see where the evidence is. Well, there isn't any, basically. religious belief. I don't ask anybody to agree with me. If someone believes that, that's okay. But that gets into another thing that I'd like to talk about a little that's come up a lot recently, which is someone will say to me, well, that's just your opinion, Robert. Well, that's true. I don't deny it. I mean, everything is a matter of opinion in a sense. But the implication there is that any one opinion is as good as any other. And I don't go there at all. I don't see that. The opinions that I have have been vetted to the best of my ability. That doesn't mean that I can't be mistaken or even deluded. It of course could happen. We're all just human here. But I've criticized every one of my opinions and tried to prove to myself that they were wrong. Every one of them, everything that I take as valid, I've asked myself, is there some other explanation? What could it be? How did you start to believe this in the first place, Robert? Where does that come from? Is there some emotional need you have and this fills it up? I've been through that for years and years, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, frankly, I'm sitting here now listening to the sound of my own voice and critiquing what I'm saying. I really am. It's a habit. It's a habit. And that's why I feel a kind of confidence in speaking this way. Not that I believe that everything that I say is true. It might be and it might not be, but it has been vetted. It has really deeply vetted and also debated with intelligent people. And when someone debates with me, I don't try to win the debate. It's not even a debate. It's really, technically, it's what's called a dialectic. A dialectic is a debate without the emotional aspects. It's when you just listen to the points that are being made by the other person and try to believe them. Try to believe them. That's how you enter into this. So if Rupert Spira were here now and he and I were talking, if we had a real dialectic, he would try to listen to me and put his non-duality shtick aside and just say, what is Robert saying? Could he possibly be right? But I know he won't do that because he's so deeply involved in it now. And that's what happens to all of us who aren't free. We get involved in our beliefs and they take us over, and then we just see the world through that system of beliefs. And once you do that, it's self-fulfilling, it's self-sustaining, because you can always find evidence for any belief. I mean, there's a chapter in the 10,000 Things about astrology, in which astrology has been tested completely with great scientific validity and proven to be no better than chance for making any predictions about anyone. I went into the details there, so if someone who's hearing this is interested, you can read the evidence there. But even presented with all that evidence, people will still consult astrologers to find out what's next on the agenda. I'm not trying to convince anyone that astrology is a waste of time and money. I can't, and that's the point. Once you're invested in it, it is self-fulfilling. And it is self-fulfilling because so many of the propositions that are said to apply to a double Gemini with Venus and Taurus, that's my horoscope, will apply to anyone. For example, it's been said to me, well, that Venus moon means that you're very sensitive. Well, who among us who's a human being is not very sensitive? I mean, what am I, adult? I mean, so you see, and there's a technique in fortune telling called cold reading. I don't know if you've heard of cold reading, yes? That's something to research. There's good reading on that. Well, cold reading is a technique of speaking with someone where you know nothing about that person, but by making a few propositions to that person that are very general, you'll get their confidence, and then you can find out a lot about them. You can say, you've probably sustained some real losses in your life. Is that true? You see, the person will say, well, yes. And once they agree with the first thing, you can really get deeply into that person's mind. And the psychotherapy I practice is a form of cold reading, but it's more honest because it's not a hustle. You're just helping that person to discover what they really think and feel. And the way I practiced it anyway. And there's a healing in that. Not that Robert heals the person, I don't have that power. But when you speak to another person about what you really think and feel, and you're encouraged to do that, and you start hearing these words coming out of your mouth, that can be very healing in and of itself. Oh, really? I see, I'm really in pain. I never quite realized that. See, this will happen in a good therapy. Maybe the person will cry for a long time, and all of those tears are for things that they never really admitted to themselves before. Yes? So it could be used for that purpose, but in this hustle, it's used to extract money from the person. The fortune teller's there, and they have a crystal ball, and they look into it, and now you come back next week, and they tell you, oh, this isn't very clear, I'm really going to need to go into this further, and that will take more money.